There was so much that went on in this episode that we got to dig right in. But I just have to say, just off the top, Miriam came out of nowhere and read Uche almost off the screen. I don't even know if he's going to be the same. I'm sure he's forever changed. So welcome to Chrissy is Watching, where I review reality TV, pop culture, and trending topics. Today we're talking about Love is Blind Season 5, Episode 8, which did not disappoint. There was so much to happen in this episode. I took notes. I was invested. I was like, what is about to happen next? So I had to create this video to share my opinion because I've been watching this season from the beginning, and I am a Love is Blind fan anyway, but this season has just been up and down all around with Uche, Aaliyah, Lydia. It was just so much going on. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a video on it. So this is my first video on this channel. I had to dig into the topic and I wanted to see what you all thought. So don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. So let's dig into this episode. We start this episode right where episode 7 left off, where Uche is starting up his conversation with Milton, where he's basically trying to let Milton know all that he needs to know about Lydia. And you can clearly see that Uche is out for blood. He is not happy about all that he's found out about Lydia. And he's like, Milton, come on, step to the side. Let me talk to you brother to brother so you know what's up with this girl. You see, Lydia is clearly disturbed and still upset over the conversation she just finished with Uche. And she has basically thrown herself up against the elevator and she's ready to go. She's done with it. She's over. So I guess she must have figured out that Uche was now talking to Milton. So she brings herself over and is like, no, I'm shutting this conversation down right now. She pulls Milton aside and is like, no, let's go. He don't have nothing worth listening to. Let's keep it pushing. So you hear Uche in the background saying, Milton, don't let her come between us. He can't speak to his friends. What are you doing? And Milton goes with Lydia, but you can kind of tell he still wants to be in the conversation with Uche. I feel like he still was a little bit curious about what Uche had to say. So they go off and Uche says off to the cameras, if he marries Lydia, that'd be the biggest mistake he'd ever make. So
I think if Milton says yes at the altar, that would be one of the biggest mistakes that he's ever made.
So right off the bat, you know Uche and Lydia ain't never going to be friends. They ain't never going to see eye to eye. What's done is done, and he's still mad about what happened between her and Aaliyah and how that affected him. So Uche goes and returns to everybody else from the pods who's meeting on the rooftop. Izzy immediately is like, Uche, are you okay? What's going on? Because clearly everybody knows that there's been a disagreement and Lydia is clearly upset. So he tells everybody, listen, I think Lydia planned to be here. I have some information. I think she's been plotting on being here because she knew I was here, and he's still trying to get people to see Lydia for who she is. So we have Johnny in the middle of the crew who just makes a surprise face. Like she's just literally surprised listening to all the information. And Stacey is like, what's up with your face? Why are you looking like that? What's going on with your face? And Johnny is like, I'm just reacting to what Uche is saying. Nothing's going on over here, but you could tell in the middle that Stacey is clearly trying to come for Johnny as well. And Johnny's like, I'm not even looking at you. You know, she's trying to avoid anything with Stacey. You can just tell she's not really trying to have anything start up with Stacey. So Uche continues with his story, and clearly you can see, again, he's still trying to get some payback for what he feels Lydia did between him and Aaliyah. So Stacey objects. She's like, that is not what my perception of what happened was. If you were in the pods with us on the girl side, you would have seen Lydia and Aaliyah were so close. You know, Lydia was supportive of her, and she just doesn't see where Uche is coming from with his accusation. So she's like, you know, I got to speak up and say, that's not what I saw, and that was not my experience with Lydia. So some of the other pod members jump in, including Miriam. Now, Miriam is like basically saying the same thing. She's backing up what Stacey is saying, and clearly you can see it rubbed Uche the wrong way. So he's like, I don't want to hear that. I only want to hear what Stacey has to say, basically trying to shut down Miriam. And Miriam is like, you're not going to tell me when I can talk. So that started this whole back and forth between Miriam and Uche. And honey, Miriam was not here to play, okay? Uche thought he was about to read her to the ground or read her into oblivion. And Miriam was like, listen, I'm a graduate from Johns Hopkins. I don't know who you talking to. But Uche was getting really weird. Like, he was like, do you have a boyfriend? Do you not have a boyfriend? Do you have a business? Do you not have a business? So it made me wonder, did he know something about Miriam or heard something about Miriam that we didn't know from the viewer standpoint? But trust and believe, Miriam shut all that down when she was like, listen, you ain't going to tell me when to talk. I'm a graduate. You can Google me.
Boyfriend? Do you not have a boyfriend?
Wait. No. Come, no,
Hey, you're here for the cameras.
I'm here for
That's
the
the only
cameras.
thing you're here
No,
for.
come back
You're
here.
so
Let me answer your
fake.
questions. Yes, I work in Saudi Arabia. Yes, I have a fucking degree from Johns Hopkins University. You can look that up. You want to talk about who's here for the cameras? I'm not Lydia or Aaliyah. You're not going to make me cry. I'll read you for the filth you are. Loser.
So I was like, okay, girl, listen. Honey, come on with the facts. He ain't going to check you. Uche just saunters off looking at his cell phone. You know, she shut him down basically. So then Milton comes back with Lydia and he's like, can y'all look after Lydia? Because he wants to restart his conversation with Uche. So Lydia's sitting there. She's clearly emotional and upset over the whole situation that's been going on. So everybody else from the pod is comforting her, and Milton goes over to restart his conversation with Uche. But before he gets back to Uche, Lydia is telling everybody in the pods, listen, Uche is trash, he's garbage, he slept with somebody while we were together. She just spilling all the tea. So everybody was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. So then the scene turns to Milton and Uche restarting their conversation. So after she's saying he's garbage, he's trash, Johnny says, you know, Uche sounds really convincing to me. And I mean, I'm hearing you, Lydia, but Uche actually sounds like he has some valid points. She says she's confused. She feels like, you know, he said you were stalking him. And Lydia kind of brushes that conversation off. But this is the point where I kind of want to say, I kind of feel like Lydia and Milton are a bit of an odd couple. There's just something about their connection that seems odd to me. I can't quite put my finger on it, but you know, if they like it, I love it. It's just something about their connection seems weird. So Milton and Uche resume their conversation, and Uche is back to talking about, you know, I got screenshots, I got this and that. She's not who she says she is. And I would say I felt like Milton really handled it well. He was like, listen, we're all on different planes of experience. You're on the X parallel, I'm the Y parallel and all this. And he just was calm, cool, and collected. And he was just like, you know, that's your reality. She has a different perception. I have a different perception. Let's just leave it there. And I could tell that's not what Uche thought he was going to say. So he's like, well, you know, I wish you the best. I just don't want you to be hurt. And, you know, I didn't talk bad about Lydia in the pods, but I just found out so much about her. So I kind of felt like Uche backpedaled a little bit when he saw that Milton really wasn't going to go for what he was saying. And he was just keeping a level head and like, listen, I made my decision. I'm happy with her. And that's that. What happened with y'all happened with y'all. And that's that. Uche leaves it off with saying, well, basically, okay, if that's what you want to do, fine, but don't let her come between our friendship. They pounded out, and that's that. So then the camera goes to Chris and Izzy. Now, if you remember the whole thing in the pods, Chris was the one that Johnny was for, and then she dumped him to get with Izzy, and then Izzy dumped her, and then she tried to go back to Chris, and then Chris dumped her, and then now we realize after all the pods and everything that Chris and Izzy are together and they're official. So Izzy is going to Chris and he wants to talk about Johnny. And Chris is basically saying, I don't appreciate you telling Johnny that you thought I was a bad person. So Izzy is like, red flag. Flag on the play. That's not what I said. That's another red flag. I never said that. He says he didn't hate Johnny. He just doesn't like what she did to them. Then he drops the bomb that Johnny said that she wanted him to be her boyfriend and that she told him that she loved him 4 times. The look on Chris' face when Izzy said that made me feel like, Johnny, you in danger, girl, because he was not expecting to hear that. And he basically was like, when she say that? Who said that? So right after that, Stacey kind of pops into the conversation and she's like, oh my gosh, what's this drama? I thought I was leaving the drama, you know, but then she sat herself down in the middle of the drama and didn't get up. So that lets you know she really did want to be in the middle of that conversation. So Izzy is like, well, Stacey can give you the girl's perspective. You know, this is what she's saying to Chris. Well, right when he says that, Johnny pops up and she's like, oh, I see a lot of hands waving over here. So you know, everybody all right? What's going on? So she came right on cue as they were talking about her. And immediately she sits down next to Chris and she's like, don't believe them. They're full of lies. Just don't believe it. And Stacy is like, well, your man asked, he wanted to know, and I'm going to fill him in. She's like, I'm going to tell him the details. But then she goes on to basically tell Johnny, you full of shit. She just basically was like, I'm going to be blunt about it. I think you full of shit. So Johnny is like, well, actually, I think you're the deceitful one because you never told me that Izzy was your top connection in the pods.
You're deceitful.
How?
Because every conversation we had about Izzy, you didn't tell me that he was one of your strongest connections.
You never told me it was
deceitful. Oh my God, everyone knew it was Izzy.
No. And I didn't say anything.
You didn't say anything because
Johnny,
why?
what do I owe to you? I don't trust you. Honestly, if you knew it was me, you would have acted completely different with him.
I thought that was a bit weird for Chris to have to sit in between that, knowing that she going back and forth about her connection with Izzy, but that was just me. Stacey is like, you know what? I should have never shed any tears for you when you got broken up with because you're such a shit person. So she doubling down on what she got to say and how she feels about Johnny. Johnny says, well, if I'm such a shit person, why don't you ask everybody else here? And Stacey's like, I already did. They over it. We over it. Everybody's over you. So we all think the same thing. Chris interjects and is like, well, she's not a shitty person. And then Stacey says, well, if she isn't, why didn't you propose to her in the pods? Which is an interesting perspective. I have to say, I kind of was wondering the same thing. So they have some more back and forth about who was wanting who, and Izzy said Johnny was wanting him and all this and that. So by that time, I felt like they was dragging the conversation into the ground at that point. I mean, everybody already knows the dynamics, but Izzy and Stacey end up getting up and rejoining everybody else who's in the pods. And Izzy and Chris are sitting there and she's just, you know, visibly upset and crying because basically how they was coming for her. And I felt like, you know, okay, it's okay if you say something, but to keep saying something, it just seemed like it was getting to be a bit redundant. So when Stacey and Izzy rejoined the group, one of the other pod members, Mar, is like, listen, you know, she's trying to be the peacemaker. We're all friends. She's my friend. You're my friend. And Stacey's like, we're not playing that game. She's like, now's not the time to trying to be in everything from everyone's perspective. So they've clearly drawn the boundaries. They don't mess with Johnny at all. Everybody knows it. Okay, I feel like we can move on. So then we go back to Stacey and Izzy. They're going back to the apartment. And the topic of conversation is still Johnny and Chris. Izzy is saying he basically just wanted to really look out for Chris. But you can see Stacey is kind of feeling like she's over it at this point. And she was like, why do you care? He doesn't care what you had to say. Why is it still something? And so Izzy is like, well, I care about Chris and I just don't want him to make a bad decision. In that moment when Izzy was talking, I was like, has he been drinking? I don't know, the way he was slurring his words, I just was like, he had a couple drinks, you know what I'm saying? But you can clearly see that Stacey is upset and he's like, you know, well, you were so hot when you were coming against her and this and that. And Stacey is like, hold on, I'm tired of being compared and being in the same boat with Johnny. Can you have that same level of passion for our relationship when you're not pitting me against somebody else? And I kind of felt her in that point. She, you know, she's tired of you talking about this girl in this situation. Like, focus on me. So then Stacey basically lets Izzy know, I'm not satisfied with how you've been showing up in this relationship. And that catches Izzy by surprise. He's like, wait, what? I thought we was talking about Johnny and Chris. So he asked her to elaborate and she's like, well, you know, you were talking all this stuff in the pods about how you're going to be so romantic, cooking dinners and this and that. And now that we're out here in the real world, I've seen none of it. So he says, you know, you starting to make me feel like I'm not good enough. And I kind of was feeling like he was thinking about that paper plates and plastic cups discussion. When he said that, I think he's still feeling a little way about that when he was like, I'm not feeling good enough. So he walks off and Stacey is basically like, look, he's not giving what I feel he needs to be given at this point, and I don't want to accept anything less. So she goes and finds him in the closet. He's in the closet crying and upset, and you can see that he's visibly upset by what she's saying. And she basically just saunters off back into the kitchen, changes the paper towel roll like, what you want me to do? So in the next scene, we're back with Lydia and Milton, and they're in the bed talking about what happened with Uche. So she wants to know what his perspective is, and he basically repeats what he said to Uche. We're all on different parallels, and I'm really not fazed by what happened. And she basically says, well, I found my husband, so I'm not worried about Uche anyway. So they leave it at that. So in the next scene, Stacy is leading the workout class, and Izzy decides to show up and surprise her. And when he comes to the workout class, he's like, hey, I just want to be, he's saying to the cameras, I just want to be more intentional and showing up. We didn't have a great ending the other day, but I want to fight for this relationship. He always talking about how he wants to fight for the relationship. He does not stop talking about how much he wants to fight for her. So he shows up at the workout class. They talk and make up, and then he says, oh, I got you a little something. So he brought her a gift, and it was a plunger and a picture of them. And the plunger was basically a joke from what happened in Mexico when she clogged up the toilet. So she was just like, oh my God, this is the sweetest thing that happened. So, this is him trying to put in his effort, trying to say, hey, I'm showing up for this relationship. But in a weird way in the conversation, she was saying she didn't like how he doesn't show up for her. But then after they kissed and made up, she's like, I love the way he shows up for me. So I felt like that was a little bit of a contradiction. So the next day we have Izzy straightening up the apartment, and his mom shows up. So she's ready to meet Stacy. The mom looks like she's really excited. She's so surprised that he's decided to get married. And we know that he was engaged before. So I guess she's just like, I didn't know if he'd ever get back to this point. So Stacy comes in, and, she's her charming self. And the mother comes right with, hey, are you right for my son? I want to make sure you're right for my son. So Stacy basically says all the things she needs to say to kind of calm his mom's nerves. And she talks about how reassuring and calming and balanced Izzy is, and, how anchored he is and all this and that. So the mother feels like, okay, I feel good about this. Y'all relationship is going to be all right. So after we have Izzy's mom meeting Stacy, we move on to Lydia now meeting Milton's parents. And honey, okay, his family was not coming to play, not one game, okay? So when we go to Milton's house, his sister answers the door. And when she answered the door, I didn't know she was going to be the one to bring all the 1-2 punch. She was just like, I'm not letting up. But anyway, we see Milton's mom, and I could kind of tell by the way she greeted Lydia that she was just like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know what's going on with this. You can just tell from her mannerisms that she's just not convinced. So she asked some preliminary questions, about her last name and stuff like that. So the sister is like, oh, honey, before you leave this house, my mom is going to be doing a full Google search on you. And the mom is like, I'm not ashamed. I'm definitely going to do my research. The mother doesn't pull any punches, and immediately she's like, well, what does a 30-year-old woman want to do with a 24-year-old man? I was like, oh, okay. So Lydia says, well, Milton is more expressive than any of the mature men that I've dated, and he's more mature than his years. And the interesting thing I thought about that exchange is, as she was telling his mother her answers, the mom and the sister both kind of picked up on, well, you got the best answers. You got all the right things. You're saying all the right things. So Milton's dad is like, well, what makes you feel like you're ready? And again, she's coming with all the good answers. She's got all the great replies. Oh, he's this, he's that. And Milton says, he's ready. While the sister says, this is phony. This is phony. I'm not here for it. It's phony. So I was like, oh, okay. She's not playing around. She's going to let everybody know how she really feels. So the mom says, well, let's talk to Lydia alone. So then we have the mom, the sister, and Lydia all sitting down at the table. And the mother says, look, a lot of your answers seem scripted. Like, you seem like you know all the right answers. I just want to make sure you're genuine. But the sister, I feel like, looks the most unconvinced that they're ready for marriage. The sister is the most unconvinced, and she's like, I don't hear it. I don't hear Milton really giving me that reassurance that he wants to get married. So that's how the episode ended. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this episode. I'll meet you in the comments so we can discuss. I just don't know. But if you want to know my breakdown about episode 9, check out this video here. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.